We decrease their attack here and make what is probably the least intimidating Blue Eyes Chaos Max that I have ever seen.
Hey guys, we are playing Noble Knight Warriors today. Now this deck is actually based on a deck tech on YGOrg that I saw several years ago at this point. I will post that link in the description, but I was really looking forward to building this deck in paper because it was associated with the Warrior Strike Retrain Structure deck. Unfortunately, in the TCG, we got these cards in Toon Chaos, and they were significantly more expensive that way. So I was never actually able to build this deck in paper, so when Master Duel came out, this is one of the first decks that I built because I always wanted to build it and I was really looking forward to it. Basically, the point of the deck is to get into Phoenix Gearfried and Edatin and Shura. Now, we also have our In for Noble Knight package. Sublimation Knight helps us get into Isolde, and one of my favorite cards, In for Noble Knight Emperor Charles. I will break these cards down more when we get into the games, so let's jump right in.
Noble Knights on the play with just an abysmal hand, and our only out is Ashed, so we just set 2 and pass. Maybe they destroy our Cursed Bamboo Sword instead of our set Super Poly, and we're up against Swordsoul. Luckily they don't start Moye, so all they have is Baronne, and they destroy our Bamboo Sword and it gets Skullmeistered, so like I'm ready to scoop at this point, right? There's pretty much nothing for me to do, and I draw into Rhoda, I play Rhoda, it gets negated, so I set Bamboo Sword. Super Poly is not great in the Swordsoul matchup because they're all different attributes. But they do manage to pick off our Super Poly, leaving our Bamboo Sword set. And I am really confused what to do, but I grab a Golden Bamboo Sword off the top. So what I do here is I equip my Broken Sword to Baronne in order to play my Golden. And then I draw 2 cards, and I managed to draw a way to start our combo. So I normal summon special, grab a Bamboo Sword back, and then equip it so that when I send it, I can get another Golden Bamboo Sword. Isolde, of course, is going to do a search, and then we also get a search for Golden. I grab Red Layer. I don't know why I grabbed Red Layer, but I guess I was thinking maybe I can set up another turn. But I mill 3 equips in order to get into Sublimation Knight. And we do manage to draw into our Phoenix Gearfried, which is great. And we grab back a Noble Arms of Destiny. This is the one that protects your creature from destruction once per turn by battle or card effect. So I just think, maybe they have a Raigeki, maybe they have some kind of answer once we get rid of their Baronne. But it doesn't turn out that we really need to. So we can summon our Gearfried, and then this is why we play Boral Sword. We have no right to win this game, honestly. They just drew 4 or 5 cards off of Maxi, but Boral Sword lets us OTK through a really awful start, honestly. So GG's. Noble Knights on the play, and we do get to start Sublimation Knight, which is really good. It's basically a free Isolde, which means we get to go into our Isolde Kaiki combo to summon out Edatin, and then of course summon out Shura during our opponent's draw step. So I accidentally add a Golden Bamboo Sword instead of the regular one. If I had added the regular one, then I would have been able to, maybe draw into Phoenix Gearfried and have an extra negate. But that's okay. We go ahead and increase its attack so we can summon Kaiki and Fusion Summon for Shura during their draw step. And then we pass priority. So our opponent is playing a pretty spicy deck, actually. They're playing Chaos Max with the Incantation Engine, but the cool part is they actually activate Xian's Spy here and give us control of Kandal, so that they can hopefully swing in for 8,000 damage with double piercing. But I wait for the damage step here and then activate Shura, just for extra safety. Not as many things can be activated during the damage step, but Shura decreases Chaos Max's attack down to 0, and that's actually permanent, which is crazy. So after that, they just try to set up a wall and survive our next turn. So they go ahead and summon a bunch of cards. Not sure why they didn't summon Alternative and try to destroy something, but I don't think it would have mattered anyway. We do get a summon or a search off of our Roland at the end of the turn. So we find a Phoenix Gearfried and then top deck one for no reason. We go ahead and summon off of our Isolde, and look at how many cards we're about to draw here. We add back our Bamboo Sword, summon our Phoenix Gearfried and equip it, and then we activate all of these golden Bamboo Swords. It's like we have 3 Pot of Greeds in our hand. It's completely ridiculous. Just look at how many cards we get to draw out of our deck. And of course, one of the cards we draw into is Super Poly. Not that we needed to, because we could have gone into Verte somewhere, but you know, it doesn't really matter. We have Boral Sword, and we're gonna summon and summon some more. And here we get to Synchro Summon into our Emperor Charles, one of my favorite cards in the deck. And we equip it and then destroy one of their cards, and then Super Poly away 2 of their Dark Monsters for Starving Venom, who is also going to gain attack off of the Nebula Dragon. Probably could have gained more, but again, it really doesn't matter. We equip one with Phoenix Gearfried and then just swing in a bunch of times. We had more than enough damage. But really good game to our opponent. The Xian Spy is not something I've actually seen before, so props to them for the really sweet combo. Noble Knights on the play. So we go ahead and search Roland, and we have Called by the Grave for their Ash, so that's always nice. And we're going to normal summon our Roland and special summon Renaud, so we can go into our typical Isolde combo in this deck, which is adding Ichtar and then varying 5 equip spells to special summon our Haikyuu. Haikyuu is going to let us fusion summon, and we also get to add a Bamboo Sword. So we go into Edaton, and Edaton needs to discard a card in order to get up to 3,200, and then that lets us activate Haikyuu during our opponent's draw step. And at the end of our turn, we of course add our Phoenix Gearfried. So we summon our Haikyuu during their draw and then go into Shura. Shura actually plays a really important role in this game. And then we find out we're up against Drytron, and of course we don't have any interaction because we didn't draw into our Phoenix Gearfried. But that is okay. Alright, so they did manage to get into their Herald, and they managed to also send an Ava, which is activating right now, so they're going to add some more fairies to their hand. So they have a ton of negates here. The interesting part here is that they actually get greedy and put their Herald in attack mode, which does come back to bite them. But of course, they start their battle phase by swinging in with Beatrice, and we attempt to activate Shura. Of course, we know it's going to be negated, but the more fairies that we can eat up from their hand, the better, so we can actually play with our cards on our next turn. So that's why Shura is so important here. We actually get 2 Shura triggers, which means we get rid of 2 of their cards in their hand. So it gets destroyed, and that eats up their Beatrice, and then we activate our Shura again to summon an Edaton, which of course also gets negated, so they lose 2 of their fairies in their hand. And then they swing in, and we lose some life, but that's okay. We're just happy that we made it through the turn. So I summon Red Layer here, and my opponent has the option to negate the summon on Red Layer, but again, Red Layer is pretty unassuming, so he chooses not to negate the summon because he's running out of fairies, but he doesn't realize that because Red Layer has 2000 attack, we can actually crash and then keep playing in main phase 2. So now we can go into main phase 2, and crashing is really important because we get to activate Rising Fire, and they don't have any negation right now. So Rising Fire can only activate when we don't have monsters on board, which means we do get to summon our Renaud and activate it, and that's going to eat up their last orange light. So now we can activate our Phoenix Gearfried. They did add an orange light, but they only added 1, which means they're out of targets, so we're free to play the game. And we summon Roland, and then we go into Ichtar, and then also into our Isolde combo here. Of course, they end up having an Ash, but that's okay. We only wanted to bury a Cursed Bamboo Sword so we could grab a Bamboo Sword and go drawing for more options. So of course we're going to equip and draw some cards, and we draw into Super Poly, which is really great. Of course we're going to get a search off here, And I decide, for whatever reason, to activate this on the main phase and get rid of their last 2 monsters. I do think it would probably have been better if I had waited and just activated it in response to whatever they tried to do. But, you know, we did it main phase, get rid of their monsters, and then we pass turn. We add another Gearfried off the Roland at the end of our turn. And they draw a card, and they don't like what they see off the top, so they scoop it up. Alright, Noble Knight Warriors on the play. And we have our Sublimation, which is a 1-card Isolde still. And toward the end of ironing out what I wanted from this deck, I ended up adding Durendal and cutting one of the other Noble Arms, just because this one actually lets us search, which is really nice, so it's not quite as dead as our other equipped spells are. So that's what we do. We add a Roland, so we can, you know, get our searches off on our next turn. And Isolde actually gets negated here, which is unfortunate. Because Isolde is negated, we can't fusion summon into Edith's with our, you know, combo that you've seen thus far. But if you read her second ability, the sending equip spells from deck is actually part of the cost. You see that it's before this semicolon. That means it's part of the cost for activation. So even though she is negated, we can still activate the ability, send the Bamboo Sword to grave, and then get a search off. And the cool thing here is we can actually banish the Bamboo Sword that we just sent, even though Isolde is negated, to summon our Gearfried, and then bring it back when we summon Renaud. So that way we have our Bamboo Sword equipped, and we get to draw more cards off of Golden. And we draw 2 pretty good cards. We draw Super Poly and Called by the Grave. And we're up against Swordsoul, so they summon Vishuda and then go into their Swordsoul combos. I made a mistake here. I had the opportunity to Super Poly the Longwan with my Renaud. Because they're both fire, I could go into Mud Dragon, and then they wouldn't be able to summon out their Baron. But for whatever reason, I made a mistake and I didn't end up doing that. So they go ahead and get into Baron, which is too bad. But that's okay. They go into Moye, and I just, you know, I attempt to negate it. That way I get rid of the Baron negate, because it's only once while it's on the board. It's not once per turn. We also get a search for Golden, and then they summon a second Vishuda. So they try to destroy one of our face downs. They pick the Super Poly, so I don't have any choice. I have to go ahead and activate it. And they have 2 dark monsters, so we can go into Starving Venom. So we get rid of their Vishudas, and it's really important here. Starving Venom is Chain Link 1, and then I can chain the Called by the Grave as a quick effect to banish one of their Vishudas, so they can't activate it. Vishuda is not a quick effect, they have to activate it during their main phase, and Called by the Grave is going to prevent them from activating their other Vishuda in the graveyard. So we effectively shut them off from bouncing one of our cards, which is really good for us. Okay, and then we get a bunch of attack, but they go into Baxia, so they get to shuffle back our Starving Venom. And now if you look at our board, it looks like we're in really rough shape. But it's actually not that bad, because Roland gets to search our 1-card Sublimation and go into our second Isolde, which is great. We also top deck Red Layer, which is good. And then we go into our Sublimation combo for Isolde. Okay, and then we get to summon out our Oliver, which is a level 4 tuner, and we go into Emperor Charles, which you probably know I really like this card by now. And we get to equip and destroy their Baron because it doesn't have its negate anymore. And we draw some more cards, draw some really good cards. We draw into Phoenix Gearfried, and we Called by the Grave the second Vishuda, so they had no chance to bounce one of our cards with it. And I don't quite have enough for lethal here, so I'm just kind of setting up my turn. At the end of my turn, I have a chance to equip 2 cards to Emperor Charles, but I choose not to. I only equip the one that protects him from destruction. That way, during my opponent's turn, I can quick effect equip Roland from my hand and get a destruction on their board during their turn, which is crazy. That's kind of why Dryden was so good. Only Emperor Charles doesn't actually target when he does that. He just destroys the card. So they're going to search Moye and normal summon it. So I have 2 options here. I can do the thing I just talked about, which is Roland targeting Emperor Charles to destroy Moye, or I could negate their Moye with Phoenix Gearfried, but I choose to go for the Roland route so I can destroy the token that they summon. Swordsoul can't really do much without the tuner token that they have, and that basically turns off their turn, plus I get to keep up my monster negation just in case they did have something else in their hand. And my opponent could swing in and kill or Soul, but you know, I think they're just being nice. They GG, they got by Noble Knights, so that feels pretty good, and we just swing in and win the game. So really good game to that opponent. Noble Knights on the play. And I get a search. I have no idea why I picked Durendal, but I did. Maybe I really wanted to try it, but it didn't end up working. So I go into Sublimation, Isolde, search each tar, and then Berry 5 equips to summon Kaiki and Fusion Summon for Edatin, one of our favorite combos in the deck. And of course, Edatin is going to grab a red layer, and Roland we are going to equip. That way we can activate our Kaiki during their draw phase. And we find out we're up against Numeron. So we attempt to activate Kaiki because Shuro would be so good in this matchup, but they have Forbidden Droplet and prevent us from summoning. My Harpies, really big here because Edatin's attack was already decreased by the Forbidden Droplet. It doesn't get decreased more because it lost its equip spell. So they go ahead and activate their Numeron stuff, summon a bunch of cards, and we barely survive because of that interaction there. Because Edatin didn't lose 500 attack, we barely managed to live this at just 350. So they of course link into Appaloosa, and we attempt to activate Roland, but it gets negated. So we're actually pretty well set up here. We survive the turn. Numeron can't do a lot if they can't just OTK you. So we get into Emperor Charles, and we activate Durendal. I didn't know at the time, but Durendal's second ability actually has the drawback of limiting you to only summoning warrior monsters during your turn. So I figured I could, you know, get into Sublimation, get another negate off of Appaloosa, and just deal more damage. But I didn't realize that it locked me into warriors, so I can't synchro into Herald of Arclight for another negation because I'm locked into warriors. But that's okay, we can use our destruction to destroy their Numeron field spell, and we get to draw a bunch of cards, and we do draw into Gearfried, which is really good. So we go ahead and summon him, link into Isolde, just for good measure. And we get some more card draw here. Set up another turn just in case they do manage to, you know, wipe our board or do something. And we set more cards. We equip the protection equip spell. And right away, they do manage to negate our Phoenix Gearfried, but that doesn't really matter because I'm just going to Called by the Grave to get rid of one of their cards and free up my slot here, so that I can equip Roland as a quick effect and destroy their field spell. And then because of that, they just have to scoop it up. Yeah, they didn't have any options there. And because of that cool interaction with Droplet and Roland being an equip spell, we do manage to take the win. So what did we learn about Noble Knight Warriors today? And I am really happy with this deck. It is so much fun to play. I will be playing this deck in my downtime, like when I'm not focused on, you know, life or making content for a video. This is one of the decks that I end up going to just because it is so much fun to play. Obviously, not a meta strategy, right? You know, this is not the deck that you're going to craft and be like, I'm going to get to Diamond 1 with this. That's not why you play the deck. You play the deck because you like Gearfried, because you like Emperor Charles and the Noble Knight stuff, and you just want to play some warrior synergies and have some fun. As far as the deck itself goes, I think Sublimation Knight is really good. It's a 1-card Isolde, it sets up for our Kaiki Edatin combo, as well as a bunch of other combos in the deck, especially if we start with Red Layer to extend that combo. The equip spells, I ended up choosing Galatine for the attack, Arfeu du Tir for the spell trap removal, Noble Arms of Destiny, probably the most important one because it is a once protection from destruction.
Rising Fire is an equip spell that is also a monster reborn, and then Durendal also gets a search for Sublimation or Red Layer or whatever we really need at that moment. The Golden Bamboo Sword engine was huge. You saw just how many cards we were able to draw with this engine, right? And then Super Poly, of course, for the removal. Starving Venom really comes in handy. I never actually used Earth Golem. The Cyberse matchup wasn't really a problem for this deck, and it's not very common, so you could definitely, you know, throw in stuff like Tri-Fi, or is it? There it is. Or, you know, whatever other cards. If you really want to go deep on that warrior synergy, you could go Guilty Gearfried. This is a targeting negation, and it can also attack twice, which is pretty cool. If you didn't want these equip spells, you could also go with Clarent. Clarent lets you swing directly with one of your warriors. So there is room in the extra deck. We didn't get to see Muddy Mud Dragon. That can actually fuse into Millenniumize Restrict. The deck doesn't have a lot of negations, so having extra options like Millenniumize and Herald of the Arclight is actually really good for the deck, you know, just because there's so many competitive strategies going on right now in just about every rank. Swordsoul is running rampant, DPE is everywhere, so having stuff like that, you know, your Super Polys, your Called by the Graves, any kind of option to get around at least some of the strategies that your opponent's trying to use against you is always going to help out. But that is going to do it for this video. If you did like it, feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, you know, do the YouTube stuff. I will see you guys next time, and I hope you have a great day, and God bless.